My sister-in-law excluded my kids from her children's birthday parties, but expected mine to invite hers. So let me get this straight. My kids aren't good enough for your parties, but you expect them to invite yours? It's not like that, Rain. My parties have a specific guest list. It's nothing personal. Nothing personal? You've excluded my children for 3 years straight. I'm Rain, and I never imagined that birthday parties would become the battleground that tore our family apart. I'm married to Joel, and we have 3 kids, twins Brooke and Carson who are 10, and our youngest Davis who's 8. We live in a close-knit neighborhood just outside Columbus, Ohio, where everyone knows everyone and the kids all go to the same schools. Joel's sister Clarissa married this guy named Derek Ashford about 9 years ago. They have 2 children, Stella, who's 11, and Preston, who's 9. From the outside, everything looked magazine perfect. 6-bedroom colonial house, matching Range Rovers in the driveway, Caribbean vacations plastered all over Instagram and Facebook. Clarissa made absolutely certain everyone knew about their lifestyle through constant updates and carefully staged photos. The first time I noticed something was wrong was 5 years ago at Stella's 6th birthday party. We lived just 4 streets over from them. Our kids played together at every family gathering, Thanksgiving, Christmas, 4th of July. But when Stella's birthday rolled around, we never received an invitation. I thought maybe it had gotten lost in the mail or buried in my email spam folder. Hey Clarissa, I mentioned casually at a family barbecue that summer, we never got Stella's party invitation. Oh well, we kept it really small this year. Just her classmates from school, she said with this dismissive little wave of her hand. That seemed reasonable enough, I guess. Except I later discovered through Joel's cousin that the party had over 50 kids in attendance. Practically every child in our neighborhood had been there, running around their backyard with the bounce house and petting zoo they'd rented. Joel, did you know Stella's party had like 50 kids? I asked my husband that evening. Really? He frowned, setting down his coffee mug. Clarissa specifically told me it was just a small gathering with close friends. Our kids were the only ones from the extended family who hadn't been invited. Even Joel's Aunt Dorothy's grandchildren had attended, and they lived 2 hours away in Cleveland. Joel looked genuinely uncomfortable. Maybe there's a reasonable explanation. But there wasn't. The pattern continued like clockwork. Preston's birthday came around 7 months later, and again, no invitation for our kids. Same excuse from Clarissa, keeping it small and intimate. Same reality, massive celebration with dozens of guests. I started paying closer attention at family events after that. Clarissa was always pleasant and friendly to my face, smiling and making small talk about book club and yoga classes. But I noticed she never really engaged with my children. When Brooke would excitedly try to show her a drawing from art class, Clarissa would give it the briefest glance before turning away. When Carson asked her questions about anything, her answers were short, almost curt, clearly dismissive. Mom, why doesn't Aunt Clarissa like us? Brooke asked me one evening after a Thanksgiving gathering. My heart absolutely shattered. What makes you think she doesn't like you, sweetheart? She talks to Stella and Preston all the time, but she never really talks to us. And we never get to go to their birthday parties like the other cousins do. My 10-year-old daughter had noticed what I'd been desperately trying to rationalize away. The exclusion was deliberate, consistent, and my children were feeling it. The next family dinner, I pulled Joel aside into the hallway. We need to talk to Clarissa about this situation. The kids are noticing they're being deliberately excluded, and it's hurting them. I'll talk to her, he promised. Joel did talk to her, but according to him, Clarissa insisted everything was simply about party sizes and tight budgets. She claimed their elaborate parties were expensive and they had to limit the guest list to manage costs. That's completely ridiculous, I said, pacing our kitchen. They rent out entire venues with ice sculptures and professional entertainment. 3 more kids wouldn't even make a dent in their budget. Year 3 of this pattern was when things truly escalated to a breaking point. Stella was turning 9, and Clarissa threw this absolutely massive princess-themed extravaganza at the Riverside Event Center downtown. There were professional performers, a mobile petting zoo, face painters, the works. Every single kid in the extended family received a beautifully designed invitation, except ours. Brooke came home from school visibly upset one afternoon. Mom, everyone at school is talking about Stella's party this Saturday. Why didn't we get invited? Her eyes were watering. I don't know, honey. I really don't know. Kyle said there's going to be real ponies and a professional magician who was on TV. All our cousins are going, even the ones who live far away. I was absolutely furious. I called Clarissa directly that evening, my hands shaking as I dialed. I need to talk about why my children are never invited to your kids' parties, Clarissa. Rain, I've explained this multiple times. We have very limited space. Stop lying to me right now, I interrupted. You rented an entire event hall. You have a petting zoo and ponies coming, but somehow there's no room for your own niece and nephews. There was a long pause. Well, if I'm being completely honest, your children can be a bit much. They're loud and don't always follow instructions properly. Stella's parties have a certain atmosphere I'm trying to maintain. I was absolutely speechless. A bit much. They're children, Clarissa. Normal, happy, energetic children. I'm just saying they're not as well behaved as some of the other kids who attend. It's nothing personal against you or Joel. It's completely personal. You're excluding them because you've decided they're not good enough for your precious, perfect parties. She got defensive immediately. I have every right to invite whoever I want to my children's birthday parties. That's my decision as their mother. You're absolutely right about that. And I'll remember you said that. I hung up, my hands trembling with rage. Joel came home 20 minutes later to find me crying at the kitchen table. When I told him exactly what Clarissa had said, he was livid in a way I'd rarely seen. She said, what about our kids? That they're too loud and don't follow instructions? That they're not well behaved enough for her sophisticated parties? His face was red. That's absolute garbage. Our kids are wonderful. They're energetic and fun, sure, but they're not badly behaved in the slightest. She's been systematically excluding them because she thinks they're beneath her children socially. And she's been lying about it for 3 years. Joel called Clarissa immediately. I could hear her making weak excuses through the phone speaker. He finally snapped. You know what, Clarissa? If our kids aren't good enough for your elaborate parties, then your kids aren't coming to ours anymore either. That's final. That's incredibly childish, Joel, she said coldly. No, what's childish is excluding your own niece and nephews from family events for years because you think you're better than everyone else. He hung up, and we sat in heavy silence for a long moment. What do we tell the kids? I asked quietly. The truth, that Aunt Clarissa and Uncle Derek have very different ideas about parties, and that's their choice to make. But it absolutely wasn't okay. The exclusion continued relentlessly, and my kids noticed. They stopped asking why they weren't invited and simply started accepting that Stella and Preston's parties weren't meant for them. That quiet acceptance somehow hurt even more than the questions had. Then came Brooke and Carson's 10th birthday. We planned a huge celebration at Thunder Zone Bowling and Arcade. It was going to be spectacular. We'd invited their entire 5th grade class, our extended family, and kids from throughout the neighborhood. About 60 kids total. 2 weeks before the party, Clarissa called me out of the blue. Hey, Rain. I just wanted to confirm that Stella and Preston are on the guest list for the twins' party. I genuinely couldn't believe what I was hearing. Excuse me? The twins' birthday party in 2 weeks. Stella and Preston are invited, right? I need to know for planning purposes. Let me ask you something, Clarissa. How many of our children's birthday parties have Stella and Preston been invited to over the years? Well, I mean, you haven't really had many large parties recently, have you? Wrong. We've had 4 significant parties in the past 3 years. We invited Stella and Preston to every single one. They attended exactly one of them. You claimed you were too busy for the others. We had scheduling conflicts. But now you're expecting them to be invited to this one after you've deliberately excluded my kids from every single one of yours for years? There was telling silence on the other end. So let me get this straight, I continued. My kids aren't good enough for your carefully curated parties, but you expect them to invite yours? It's not like that, Rain. My parties have a specific guest list. It's nothing personal. Nothing personal? You've excluded my children for 3 years, Clarissa. Well, maybe if you taught them better manners and proper behavior, they'd be more welcome at sophisticated events, she said icily. That did it for me. You know what, Clarissa? No. Stella and Preston are not invited to this party. You've made it crystal clear that our children aren't welcome at yours, so yours aren't welcome at ours. It's that simple. You cannot be serious. They're family, Rain. Exactly. They're family. Something you seem to forget when you're making your exclusive guest lists. But I guess family only matters when it's convenient for you. I'm calling Joel about this immediately. Go right ahead. He agrees with me completely. She hung up abruptly. Within an hour, my phone was blowing up with calls and texts. Clarissa had immediately called Joel's mother, Ruth, crying about how cruel and vindictive I was being to her innocent children. Ruth called me almost immediately. Rain dear, what's this about excluding Stella and Preston from the party? Clarissa is absolutely distraught. Did Clarissa mention that she's excluded our kids from every single party they've thrown for the past 3 years, Ruth? She mentioned she had to keep the parties small and manageable. Ruth, her parties have had 60-70 kids. She's rented professional venues with full catering. The only kids consistently excluded were mine, her own niece and nephews. That can't be right. She told me directly to my face that our children aren't well behaved enough for her sophisticated parties. Those were her exact words. So yes, I told her that Stella and Preston aren't invited. If my kids aren't good enough for her parties, then turnabout is fair play. Ruth was quiet for a long moment. I had no idea it was like that. Let me talk to Clarissa. Whatever Ruth said clearly didn't help the situation. Clarissa showed up at our house the very next day with Derek in tow, looking like they were ready for battle. We need to talk about the situation immediately, Derek said, acting like he was mediating some corporate negotiation instead of a family conflict. There's nothing to talk about, Joel replied firmly, blocking our doorway. You've excluded our kids for years. Now you're upset that we're doing the same thing. It's not the same thing at all, Clarissa insisted, her voice rising. Our parties are carefully curated events. We can't just invite everyone randomly. But you invite practically everyone except our kids, I shot back. Kids they see every day at school. Kids from throughout the neighborhood. Cousins they barely know. Everyone but Brooke, Carson, and Davis. Well, your children have behavioral issues, Clarissa said bluntly, crossing her arms. Joel stepped forward, his jaw clenched. What behavioral issues exactly? Name one specific thing any of our kids has done that justifies excluding them for years. Clarissa stammered, clearly caught off guard. They're just loud and they run around constantly. They're children. That's literally what children do at parties, Joel said incredulously. Not at sophisticated, well-planned parties, Clarissa sniffed. Sophisticated parties? I actually laughed out loud. They're children's birthday parties, Clarissa. Not gallery openings or charity galas. You're acting like our children are going to ruin some high society event when really you're just a snob who thinks her kids are better than everyone else's. Derek finally spoke up. That's completely uncalled for. Is it though? I challenged. Your wife literally told me our children aren't well behaved enough for her parties. How else should I interpret that? You're being incredibly petty, Clarissa snapped. This party is going to have over 60 kids, Rain. What difference would 2 more make? That's exactly what I've been asking you for 3 years. I exclaimed. But apparently when it's your party, exclusion is perfectly fine. When it's ours, we're being cruel. They left angry, and Clarissa immediately went on a campaign to make us look like the villains. She called every family member she could reach, painting herself as the innocent victim. According to her version, we were excluding her precious children purely out of spite and jealousy over her successful lifestyle. Some family members bought into her narrative. Joel's Aunt Francine called to lecture us about family unity and forgiveness. Those poor innocent children don't deserve to be punished because you adults can't get along, she said sanctimoniously. Aunt Francine, Clarissa has been punishing our children for 3 years by excluding them from every party. Where was your concern for family unity then? Well, I didn't know about that situation. Exactly. Because Clarissa made sure no one knew the truth. She lied and said the parties were small when they weren't. She's only upset now because she's being held to the same standard she established. Other family members, once they learned the truth, were genuinely shocked. Joel's brother Vincent called us immediately. Is it true that Clarissa's been excluding your kids from parties for years? Every single one for 3 years, Vincent. That's seriously messed up. I had no idea. Clarissa always made it sound like she invited everyone. The party came and went, and it was absolutely amazing. The kids had an incredible blast, and honestly, it was better without the drama Clarissa would have brought. But the family fallout continued escalating. At the next family gathering, Clarissa refused to speak to us. She made sure Stella and Preston stayed far away from our kids, watching them like a hawk. Ruth tried to smooth things over, but Clarissa was determined to play the victim. Then something interesting happened. About a month after the party, I ran into a woman named Monica Hayes at Target. She was a mom from the kids' school, and I'd seen her at various school events. "Rain, I've been meaning to reach out to you," she said, approaching my cart. "I heard about what happened with Clarissa." "Oh great," I sighed. "What's she saying now?" "Actually, she's not saying anything. But a group of us moms were talking, and we realized she's been doing this exact same thing to other families too." "Wait, what do you mean?" "Excluding certain kids from parties while inviting everyone else. There's a whole group of us whose kids have been consistently left out. We always thought it was just us individually, but it's a deliberate pattern." This was news to me. "Really? How many families?" "At least 8 or 9 that we've identified. She only invites kids from families she considers successful enough or prestigious enough. It's like she's cultivating some elite social circle for her kids." Over the following weeks, I learned that Clarissa's exclusionary behavior had affected numerous families throughout the school and neighborhood. She had this hierarchy in her head about which children were worthy of attending her elaborate parties. Kids whose parents had certain jobs or lived in certain neighborhoods made the cut. Everyone else was systematically excluded. The school community started talking about it openly. Some parents confronted Clarissa directly about the pattern. She tried to defend herself, but it was hard to justify when the pattern was so obvious. Then the principal got involved. Several parents had complained that Clarissa was creating harmful social divisions among the students by hosting these elaborate parties and deliberately excluding certain children based on their family's perceived status. The school sent out a reminder about their anti-bullying policies and encouraged all parents to be more inclusive in their social planning. Clarissa was mortified. Her carefully constructed image of being this perfect mother with the perfect family was crumbling. People weren't looking at her extravagant parties with admiration anymore. They were seeing them as symbols of elitism and exclusion. Things got worse when Stella started having friendship problems at school. Other kids didn't appreciate how exclusive her parties had been over the years. They started excluding Stella from their activities in response. Kids can be surprisingly principled sometimes. Clarissa called me crying one evening. "Stella is being bullied at school because of this whole party controversy." "She's not being bullied, Clarissa. She's experiencing the natural consequences of your behavior. Kids don't want to be friends with someone whose family consistently makes them feel excluded and inferior." But Stella didn't do anything wrong. Neither did Brooke, Carson, or Davis. But that didn't stop you from excluding them for 3 years and making them feel inadequate. "I'm asking you to please talk to the other parents. Tell them this has gone too far." "Why would I do that? You created this situation. You spent years making children feel like they weren't good enough for your sophisticated social standards. Now your daughter is experiencing what that exclusion feels like. So you're just going to let an innocent child suffer? I'm going to let you handle the mess you created. Maybe this will teach you that actions have consequences." Derek tried a different approach. He showed up at Joel's office unannounced to talk man-to-man about the situation. "This has gotten out of hand," Derek said, settling into the chair across from Joel's desk. "We need to fix this for the kids' sake." "I agree," Joel replied calmly. "Clarissa should apologize to our children for excluding them and making them feel inferior for years. You can't seriously expect her to apologize." "Why not? She told Rain directly that our kids weren't well behaved enough. That's not about party size or logistics. That's about thinking her kids are socially better than ours." "Look, maybe she could have communicated better. But you're taking this too far. Now our daughter is suffering. My kids suffered for 3 years, and neither of you cared. Forgive me if I'm not rushing to fix your problem." Things finally came to a head at Ruth's birthday dinner 2 months later. The entire family was there, and the tension was palpable. Clarissa kept shooting us dirty looks while making pointed comments to anyone who would listen about family loyalty and forgiveness. Finally, Vincent had had enough. Okay, everyone needs to address this elephant in the room. Clarissa, you excluded Rain and Joel's kids from parties for years. That was wrong. Rain and Joel, you excluded Clarissa's kids in response. Also wrong. Can we all just admit fault and move forward? I'm not admitting fault, Clarissa said immediately, her chin raised. I had legitimate reasons for my guest lists. What reasons exactly? Ruth asked quietly. I've been hearing that you've excluded quite a few children over the years, not just Rain's. Clarissa looked trapped, her eyes dotting around. I just wanted nice, appropriate parties for my children. By making other children feel inadequate and inferior. Ruth continued gently. Clarissa, I raised you better than that. You don't understand what I was trying to do. I was trying to give Stella and Preston the best opportunities. The best opportunities for what? I interjected. To become snobs? Because that's what you're teaching them, that some people aren't good enough based on arbitrary standards you created. Clarissa started crying, but this time nobody rushed to comfort her. The family had finally seen through her behavior. I think, Ruth said carefully, that everyone needs to reassess their priorities. Clarissa, you owe your brother and his family a genuine apology. A real one, not deflection. Clarissa did eventually apologize, though it was painfully obvious how forced it was. I'm sorry if my party decisions hurt anyone's feelings. That's not an apology, Joel said firmly. That's deflection. We left the dinner without resolution, but something fundamental had shifted. The family had finally seen Clarissa's true colors, and she couldn't pretend anymore that she was just being practical about party planning. Over the following months, Clarissa's social standing took a serious hit throughout the community. Parents stopped accepting her party invitations. Her supposedly exclusive events became actual small gatherings because people were tired of her elitist attitude. Stella and Preston started getting invited to other kids' parties again, but Clarissa wasn't welcome to stay and socialize like she used to. She tried to blame us for turning people against her, but the truth was undeniable. She'd done it to herself. Years of making other families feel inferior had finally caught up with her. What struck me most was watching how this affected Stella and Preston. They seemed confused by their sudden social shift. Stella especially struggled to understand why friends who used to flock to her were now distant. I actually felt sorry for them. They were innocent kids caught in their mother's web of social manipulation. One afternoon, I ran into Stella at the library. She was alone, looking through books, and seemed genuinely sad. Against my better judgment, I approached her. A Stella. Finding anything good? She looked up, surprised. Aún reina. Just looking. How are you doing? How's school? Her eyes filled with tears. It's okay, I guess. Some of my friends aren't really talking to me anymore. My heart ached for her. Whatever her mother had done, this child didn't deserve to suffer. I'm sorry you're going through that, sweetie. Sometimes grown-ups make decisions that affect kids in ways they don't intend. Is it because my mom didn't invite Brooke and Carson to my parties? Her directness surprised me. Partly, yes. But also because over time, a lot of families felt excluded. It's not your fault, Stella. You didn't make those decisions. About 6 months after our initial confrontation, Clarissa reached out to me directly, not through family members or Derek, just her calling my cell phone. Rain, it's Clarissa. Can we talk? Actually talk, I mean. We met at a coffee shop, neutral territory. She looked different somehow, less polished, less put together than usual. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she started, stirring her coffee nervously. And some therapy, actually. Derek insisted after everything that happened. I waited, saying nothing. I was wrong about everything. The parties, excluding your kids, the way I treated so many families. Her voice cracked. I was so focused on creating this perfect image, this perfect life for my kids, that I became someone I'm not proud of. Why, Clarissa? Why did it matter so much? She was quiet for a long moment. My family didn't have much growing up. I was always the poor kid, always excluded. When I married Derek and we had money, I swore my kids would never feel that way. But instead of protecting them, I just became the person who made other kids feel how I used to feel. It was the most honest she'd ever been with me. I can't undo the past 3 years, she continued. But I want to try to make things right. Really right. Not just apologizing because Ruth told me to. We talked for 2 hours that day. It didn't fix everything immediately, but it was a genuine start. Today, 3 years later, things are different. Clarissa's parties are truly smaller now, intimate family gatherings where all the cousins, including mine, are included. She volunteers at the school, but in behind-the-scenes roles, not spotlight positions. Stella and Preston have rebuilt friendships based on genuine connection rather than their mother's social engineering. We're not best friends, Clarissa and I. We probably never will be. But we're family, and we're cordial. Most importantly, our kids are all included, all welcomed, all treated equally. My children learned valuable lessons through this ordeal, about standing up for yourself when treated unfairly, about how exclusion hurts everyone, and about the importance of genuine relationships over image. Sometimes the best outcome isn't perfect reconciliation. Sometimes it's just people finally experiencing the consequences of their actions and choosing to do better.